tragedy. The word went out earlier this week that a Himalayan bird, rarely seen in the UK, had been sighted in the Western Isles. Bird has descended on the Isle of Harris to see the bird, only to witness it fly into a wind turbine and die. This is the ex-white-throated needletail. A member of the swift family. It's the fastest bird in the world, supposedly, capable of reaching speeds of 70 miles an hour. Unfortunately, hitting a wind turbine at that sort of speed proved fatal.
We were watching the bird at the time. We were just getting some of our best views through the telescopes of it, sort of being in the air all the time. You're seeing most of it silhouette against the sky, but this thing was then passing against the hills. You could see the colours of it really well. Everyone was really happy, and it suddenly flew past the twin turbine and banked. Maybe it had seen an insect or something, and then it just fell to the ground.
Well, fellow birdwatcher James Hanlon also witnessed the white-throated needletail's tragic demise. A short while ago, he went into our Carlisle studio. I asked him to describe what he saw.
Well, a number of us had travelled quite a long distance up to the Western Isles to witness this occurrence. It's an extremely rare bird. It's only been seen about 10 times before in Britain. We travelled from sort of all parts of the country. And we've been watching it yesterday on and off for quite some time. It was wheeling around pretty quickly over the moorland. And at one point it flew around a wind turbine. At the time I was giving a bit of a commentary to the guy next to me, just telling him where it was, because it's quite hard to follow at speed. As it flew around the turbine, it seemed to disappear behind it, and then suddenly it just fell limply to the ground. There was a crowd of probably about 12 to 15 people, maybe half of whom were watching the bird at the time. And it, as you can imagine, it was an utter shock to just witness it hit a turbine and then fall to the ground.
Do you know if it hit the turbine body or whether it was hit by a blade of the turbine?
To my eyes, it seemed to head towards the centre of the turbine rather than the edge of the blades. I can't imagine that it did fly into the wind, the turbine body. It must have been hit by a blade, but I certainly got the impression it was at the base of one of the blades rather than near the tip.
Well, what makes the incident seem so bizarre, doesn't it, is that when you see pictures of the area, it's not as if this was a big wind farm or something. There was one turbine, wasn't there, and nothing else in the whole area.
Yeah, it's quite incredible. It was one turbine and a small one at that, and it serves the local community. It's not part of a large wind farm, you know, many of which are in the area. It was a small turbine. The bird flew by and just seemed to collide with the blade and fall limply to the ground. Absolutely shocking thing to see. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I know birds do get hit by wind turbines, especially large birds of prey, and I have seen it on the internet. But to see it happen in front of us was absolutely shocking.
So we'd have to put it down to some extent to a free. I mean, it doesn't really tell us anything more general about wind turbines, does it? If this was just a little one stuck in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, we know bird strikes do happen, especially with large birds of prey, and they're not always killed. They do sometimes survive. But I think what this does is, because it's happened in such a prominent way with such a rare bird in front of an audience, I think it really brings to the fore the arguments here that these bird strikes do have to be considered when sort of evaluating wind farm sites. I mean, they obviously are having an impact on our bird life.
Okay, now obviously this was a tragedy for this particular needletail, but it's not a tragedy, is it, for needletailedom in general? I mean, these are not endangered birds, are they?
They're not. No, they're not endangered at all. White-throated needletail, I think, has been seen about 10 times, maybe in Britain. They're native to Asia. I think I've seen one in Australia years ago. Obviously, the species is not at risk, but what it does show is that wind turbines can be a threat to birds, and in the area we're talking about, it's a very important area for large birds of prey like golden eagles and white-tailed eagles. And certainly they are rare birds of prey.
In your capacity as bird expert, just tell us, I'm just curious, I mean, how on earth would a little bird like this, I mean, I know swallows, it's a bit like a swallow, isn't it? They go to Africa and overwinter, then come back here, but how on earth would a bird that lives in Asia and overwinters in Australasia end up in the Western Isles?
I wouldn't say they just overwinter in Australasia. Birds arrive here from all corners. We get large numbers of birds from across Asia. We get overshoots from the south, from Africa. I mean, no one knows fully why they arrive here. There are various sort of ideas, such as reverse migration, where young birds kind of go the wrong way and just head off in the wrong direction. But actually, every spring and autumn, we are inundated with rare birds from very far afield.
Okay.
It's not that often we get ones from as far afield, as the Needletails come from, but it does happen on a regular basis.
Now, what I'm also curious as to what motivates people like you, called twitchers in the trade, I believe, to travel all these distances when someone spots a bird and people immediately. I used to know people who would within a day's notice they would fly to somewhere like Thailand to spot a bird. What's the motivation for doing that?
That's a hard question to answer, actually. I've had a fascination with birds since I was a young kid, and I've always had an interest in rare birds, and I just find them fascinating. I want to travel.
But when did you, for example, when did you find out that this bird was there?
That would have been, the last 2 days have just been a blur, really. We're still actually on our way south to London on a very long trip. We've been on the road for 2 days. I think I found out about it Tuesday afternoon, and we set off at something like midnight on Tuesday night.
Right, so basically you just dropped everything and went up there?
Yeah, I mean, I had a window of a couple of days where I could do it. I mean, I won't get in till about 3 a.m. Tomorrow morning, and then I'm going off on holiday with the family. So I'd say it's a pretty tight window. I was working the evening before we left as well, but it's a tight window. We had a couple of days. We've squeezed the trip in. But yeah, it's not easy to drop everything and shoot off, especially when, like me, you have a family.
And quick look at tomorrow's front pages, starting with the Scotsman. Salmon will not go to open at Allmail Golf Club. That's at Muirfield, it says. Telegraph, millions face higher taxes to cut the deficit, it says. That's all we have time for. We'll be back next week. Good night.